Hey, 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 welcome to the Kirk McPhee Show. Have I got a story for you? So, my special guest today is my son Mateo, and he's going to start out with one of his classic jokes. What do you say, Mateo?
Did you know uh uh did you know that dinosaurs can't eat fish?
Why not?
Cause they're dead.
He's got better ones. Mateo,
Um why did the elephants get kicked out of the pool?
why, buddy?
Cause they couldn't keep their trunks up.
There you go, Mateo. All right, so Mateo's also going to help me introduce our sponsor and do a little sample. So, we're sponsored by WaveX, and Mateo's been selling these at his school. I think he's up to four customers already. He's got on the line, so we're waiting for shipment. But Mateo, can you explain how this works?
Yeah, so plastics
I'll
um
hold the mic for you.
plastics, some of most of them have this like
Strap.
handle that you can put on, and then you if you wanna open
Stay,
it,
stay, stay.
if you wanna open it, you have to put, put this up, and if you can't open it, push this down.
Okay.
And there is a lot of flavors, and this one has cola in it.
Is cola one of your favorites?
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. And there's a little spot like about right here where it can put this part.
And what happens? Are you actually tasting water that tastes like cola, or it seems like it tastes like cola?
It seems like it's tasting cola, but it's you're really not tasting it. You're just smelling it. It's just a scent.
Yeah, the bubbles come up through your nose, and your it feels like you're tasting whatever flavor is in there, right?
Yeah.
All right. I want to thank Mateo for helping me out with this advertisement and his joke, and I'm going to let him go right now. We'll see him soon. I want to thank my buddy Mateo for his joke and his little presentation on our wonderful sponsor, WaveX. He's having a lot of fun selling them the water bottles at school, telling all his friends about the different flavors. We got orange mint, green apple, and he's got cola in his right now. He loves the cola. There's coffee. We're working on more flavors, but anyways, thanks to WaveX for helping us with this. So when I last left you, I was sitting at a bar. I was 26 years old, pondering my life, working an unfulfilling corporate job. Things weren't too bad for me, but felt like I needed to do something. As after I heard a song in the jukebox that I couldn't believe that it was on the radio or on the jukebox, and then I heard on the radio. I'm like, I gotta do something about this. So at the time, I didn't know anything about the music business. I was living in Detroit suburb, and I thought that New York or LA were the place to go to really figure it out. They Nashville wasn't booming like it is now. It was country for sure, but that was about it. I think back then it was like 1997. So um, I bought a book called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business, and I read it. Then also from my office at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan in Detroit, Ted Nugent had a radio show broadcast from his house in Jackson, Michigan. And I closed the door to my office and I called him and I got through. And I said, "Hey, Uncle Ted, what do you think? I'm going to move to LA or New York to pursue music." and he just went off like, "Don't do it, man. There's a lot of stuff going on in Detroit." And this was right before Kid Rock, Eminem, the White Stripes, all Detroit musicians blew up. So late 90s, 97 to be precise. But he told me, he's like, you just gotta stick around, and Detroit's about to blow up. But at the time, I had short hair. I didn't know music. I didn't know how to play anything, and I couldn't just go down to the local club and say, "Hey guys, I'm a musician now." I felt like I had to get out of my element. So I always wanted to go to California. I've been to New York, but I always wanted to go to California, especially after growing up freezing on January 1st and watching the Rose Bowl, Michigan State being in the Rose Bowl, and I would be freezing in my basement and I'd be watching TV and these cheerleaders are jumping around and people in t-shirts and shorts. I'm like, where is that? So that gave me the bug to always want to go check out California. So I decided on LA. So I started saving up some money. I gave myself a few months, started growing my hair, and then I put my 2 weeks in at Blue Cross Blue Shield. In the meantime, I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I took the LSAT, which is the entrance exam for law school. I thought about being a lawyer. So about a week before I left for California, I got a letter in the mail and I got a full ride to Seton Hall University in New Jersey. I could have gone to law school for free because I did so well on the exam. But I'd already made up my mind. I had rented a U-Haul and I was heading out. So then I had my resume in. A friend of mine's girlfriend worked for Ford Motor Company, and she asked me for my resume several months earlier, and she put it in, and literally the day before I was moving to California, I got a call from Ford Motor Company offering me a job, like a very good paying job. And I just said, no thanks. And the guy was like, what? And I said, I'm moving to California. He's like, for what? I'm like, I'm going out there to pursue music and gonna check it out. And he's like, man, he's like, I'm offering you a great job. You got a good chance of getting it. And so says you're a great candidate. And I said, well, thank you very much, but no thanks. So I turned down a law school scholarship and a pretty awesome offer from Ford Motor Company to go pursue music and try to be a rock star without knowing anything. So a little bit before I actually left, a friend of mine at Blue Cross, who might be watching, Scott Burgess, told me, he said, hey man, I got this friend of mine, Karen Schick, Karen Nelson. I still wish I could find her. I'm not sure what happened to her, but anyways, he said she used to live in LA and she used to work with some guy who had something to do with music. Would you want to meet her? I said, sure. I don't know anything. So we had lunch in Greektown, block away from my work, me, Scott, and Karen, and or Karen, Scott, and I. And so we started talking, and she said, I got this guy I used to work for, and he was a music attorney. And the only thing I knew about that was from the book that I read, Everything You Want to Know About the Music Business. And she's like, I don't know if he can help you, but just tell him Karen Schick sent you and ask him to go, if he wants to go eat Thai food. And he won't say no. So fast forward, drove across the country, started getting set up in California, and I called this guy, Al Schlesinger. And I said, hey, I heard from Karen that you might want to go get some Thai food. And he's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. So he gave me his address in Beverly Hills, a high-rise office and went up there, said I'm here to have lunch with Al Schlesinger, just like right this way. And so I met him for the first time, and we went downstairs and walked around the corner. He's like, I got a great place, you'll love it. So he says, so what do you want? How can I help you? And I said, well, I just moved here from Michigan. I think I can sing, and I want to pursue music. And that's about all I had to tell him. He's like, well, he's like, he wrote down a number. He said, give this guy a call. He's the dean of voice coaches in LA. And if this guy says you can sing, then you can sing. And his name was Seth Riggs. So I didn't know who Al was and I didn't know who Seth was. But when I looked them up, I found out that Al Schlesinger at the time was Melissa Etheridge's lawyer. He was the first manager of the band Bread from the 60s. I think he represented the Doors at one point. I think he helped Celine Dion get a deal in Las Vegas. And he was the president of NARAS, which is National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, and they put on the Grammys. He was the president, former president at that time, but it's very well established. And I told him about the book I was reading, and he said, oh, yeah, Donald Passman. He's a good buddy of mine. So he knew the attorney that wrote the book I was reading. This is my first few weeks out in LA. So I call Seth Riggs, and I said that Al sent me or asked me to call you and get a lesson. It's like, sure, come over to the house. So I go to his house, and I walk in, and there's gold and platinum records all over the walls. Luther Vandross, Michael Jackson, Aretha Franklin. He even taught Milli Vanilli, tried to, after they got discovered that they weren't singing. So this guy was huge. And I'm in there, and he's got this big piano and two open doors, like it was set inside of the middle of his house and kind of like sideways. And I'm just looking at all these gold records, and I'm going, wow. So he's like, all right, do this, and he would hum, or he'd play something on the piano, and I'd do it, and then he'd stop to tell a story. Like he'd just stop and say, hey, you know that Tony Katis? Tony Katis, he's like, he was in this room and it smelled so bad, like the guy didn't shower for weeks. I had to open all the doors and get fans in here, and it was terrible. And then he'd go, okay, try this. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wait, Tony Kiedis? He was talking about Anthony Kiedis, singer from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So I'm kind of like, I don't know if I was overwhelmed, but I was just kind of like going, wow, I was really there. And so I got done with a half-hour lesson, and he hands me this tape. I don't know if I still have it, but it was a recording of our session. And he said, you know what? He's like, you don't need me anymore. And he said, if you want, there's people that have studied under me that you can find in, the Hollywood Magazine advertising as a voice coach. And you can go to one of those people, but you don't need me, and you don't really need them either. And I'm like, well, thanks. But what do I do now? But I said, how much is it? And so at the time, this is 28 years ago, it was $150 for a half hour. But I had money, I was ready to give it. He's like, why don't you give me 75? He's like, you can pay me back. You can pay me the other 75 when you make your first million. So I was off and running just a few weeks into LA without knowing anything, never writing a song, didn't know anybody, but I decided to try. I mean, I was already there. I knew one person when I moved out there, and he went to college with my brother. His name was Matt Bauman. He still lives out there in Pasadena. He worked for a production company that put on commercials and music videos. And I asked him if he could get me a job, and he said, yeah. So I also got asked through Al Schlesinger to join the Grammy organization, the NARAS. So I did that, and I could have gone to the Grammys. It would have cost, I don't know, like $900. I think they pay for the tickets, which is nothing to all those famous, wealthy people in the business. But I decided not to go to the Grammys. But I do have some friends that I'm going to have on the show at some point that did go out to the Grammys that I helped get there. We'll just dropped them off. They wanted tickets on the radio, but we'll tell the real truth about what it is to go to the Grammys, especially if you're not famous. But I did go to a meeting one time, and I met Steve Vai. He was on the board. So, like, in no time, I was fortunate enough to get in these circles with all these heavy hitters. I mean, the biggest of the big. Not the famous ones yet, but I got to see the people who worked in the industry. So, as I mentioned, my friend Matt got me a job. So I started living in Hollywood. You could see the Hollywood sign from my bedroom window. I had a little apartment, and it was just north of Hollywood Boulevard on Bronson Avenue, 1825 North Bronson, and Franklin was the road just north of Hollywood. It was in between Hollywood and Franklin. So, then I started answering ads in the local magazines, Singer Wanted. And I found out that in Los Angeles, I thought there'd be a ton of awesome musicians, which there is. It's a big city. But what I kept running into is everyone that thought they were good from all over the world would show up in Hollywood and put out an ad, and it didn't mean that they were any good. So I had this offer to try out for a Pearl Jam tribute band, and the guy was grilling me over the phone. He's like, "Hey, do you sound like Eddie Vedder?" I said, "Yeah, I can sound like Eddie Vedder." He's like, "Do you look like Eddie Vedder?" I'm like, "I kind of do." I used to sign autographs. People thought I was Eddie Vedder. I had people take pictures of me, and I figured they probably thought I was Eddie Vedder. I was even at the bar one time, and at the end of the night, the bartender said, "Your bill's paid for." I said, "By who?" And he's like, "That girl across the way, she thinks you're Eddie Vedder." So I just waved and thank you. So, anyways, I got to this audition, and I got there, and I said, "All right, what are we gonna play first?" I knew Pearl Jam songs, and the guy's like, "Well, how does Even Flow go?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they didn't even have the songs. They couldn't play them, and I didn't have a guitar. I didn't know how to play the guitar, and so I had to leave that audition. Then I ran into more people like that, so I'm like, well, uh, if I want to do anything in the business in music, I'm going to need to learn an instrument so I could write some songs. So I had a guitar, got a guitar, and I went to Guitar Center and bought a chord book. And so this was before YouTube and, before the internet, really. So I had to sit there and open this book. I probably still have it somewhere. And it just shows you where to put your fingers, for a D chord. Your first finger goes here, second, third. And I sat on my couch for a year and a half and it just went plump, plump, plump. I mean, people had showed me a little bit before before I left. I could play one song, Mr. Jones. That was it. I remember having a party in Wyandotte, Michigan, and I just played Mr. Jones over and over again because that's all I knew how to play. But I wasn't that good. So here I am trying to figure out how to play these chords. And so I would strum one and then it would sound right. I'm like, oh, cool. So I'd go to bed, wake up the next day, and play it again, and it still sounded good. So I'm like, all right, I can move on to the next chord. So I'd go from D to G to C, and I got it. So then I met this girl who told me I should go to an open mic night, and I didn't know what an open mic night was. I didn't know anything about what I was doing. I just really thought I could sing as good as a lot of people. Um, so um, I wrote my first song, and it's called "In the Morning," and it's on one of my CDs. Um, I So one day the open mic night was on a Monday, and it was this bar on the Hollywood or Sunset Strip in Hollywood. It was called the Coconut Teaser, and I didn't know it that a lot of famous bands came out of there. I think Stone Temple Pilots played there, and Limp Bizkit, and some of those kind of bands at the late '90s, Fastball. But so finally, I said, "All right, I'm gonna go." And so I show up at this place with my guitar and my one song, "In the Morning," and there's 100 people lined up, like these hardcore looking musicians, with their gig bag and you know their clothes, their outfits, and they look like they've been through the ringer. We're all standing on the sidewalk, and there's a clipboard going around, and so they're all signing it. So I figure I need to sign it. So I went to reach for it, and someone pulls the clipboard and said, "No, this one's for you." And I'm like, "Well, what's this one?" They said, "Well, you've never been here before, right?" And I said, "No." They said, "This is the one that the new people sign." So they all knew each other, and I must have stuck out like a sore thumb. They knew I'd never been there before. So I'm like, okay, so I sign it, and I'm the first one to sign it. I was the only one that had never been there before out of 100 musicians. So they finally let us in the bar, and we walked downstairs. It was called the Crooked Bar. It had these narrow, rickety stairs that you walk down into the basement of this bar. It was like 3 levels. They had different bands and DJs and stuff like that. But down here was the acoustic area. And so we all get settled in, and this lady says, "Okay, um, we're going to get started. Kirk McPhee, you're up." And I was like, "Oh, man." And, oh, I forgot something. So I said, "So what's the deal?" When I was out on the sidewalk still. And they said, "We get to play 2 songs, and they have to be originals." And I'm like, "Oh, man, like I only had one original written." So I got some paper somehow, and I wrote another song while I was out on the sidewalk waiting. So then I get called up first. So I just got up there and I said, "Well," and of course I was a little nervous. I'm in front of a bunch of musicians, and I'm just a hack trying to figure it out. And so I'm like, "Well, here's the first song I ever wrote," and I played that one fine. I kind of had that one down. And I said, "All right, so for my second song, I just wrote it on the sidewalk, and so bear with me." So I literally had this song, the piece of paper on my lap, and I'm playing it, and it's words I just wrote. I didn't have memorized. I didn't have anything memorized, and so I just played it. And at one point, the paper fell off my legs, so I had to stop, bend down, pick it up, put it back on my lap, and I just kept going. So I get done, and the lady who had called me up says, "Come here." And so she was the manager of the place. And the reason why she had a separate clipboard is because she wanted to see if there's any new talent. All the other people she'd seen and heard before. And I was the only one. She's like, "Hey," it's like, "Can you play here on Saturday?" And I'm like, "Saturday?" I'm like, "You saw what just happened. Like, I only have like 1 1/4 song right now." And she's like, "Well," she's like, "here's my card. her name was Dawn Phillips, I think. And I said, she's like, whenever you're ready, you got a gig here. And I couldn't believe it. So I just like struck gold again. So I went home and started writing songs. So I finally had, I think I only had about 5 songs written. And, but I called her because I didn't know how long my set would be. And she's like, all right, we'll put you on Saturday, let, I don't know, 10 to 12 or whatever, like some primo spot, like 9 to 11 Saturday night on the Sunset Strip, my very first gig. And I'm like, I only have, five five songs or whatever. She's like, just figure it out. Just keep playing the same 5 songs, whatever, You can play a cover here and there, but I want you to play. So I said, okay. So I might have had a little bit more time because my parents flew out and a couple of my good friends, Mike Asmussen and Chrissy Dodge from high school and Michigan State fame. So they flew out and my mom and dad flew out. And so I had my big gig at the Coconut Teaser. And so before that, I was working, I got a job on commercials and music videos. My friend Matt set me up. And I was just a gopher. I was a guy that was there first, setting up garbage cans, emptying garbage cans, driving film around Hollywood, headshots and, um, film and doing wardrobe and just the gopher, the peon guy. But every time I went to this one casting director's house, I guess she'd say, send the cute guy. And so I got to meet this casting director, and she kept saying, um, why aren't you an actor? Why don't you audition for something? I said, I don't know anything about acting. I'm like, can you get me in? She's like, yeah. So she gives me 3 numbers for agents. So I went to the first 2, and they were like the typical Hollywood stories, dirty couch in the hallway, dingy lights. And the first 2 I went to, you could tell that they were just um, doing a favor, and my headshot would probably end up on the shelf and I would never get a call. So then the third one was Acme, and I knew that if you got into Acme, like you'd be working all the time. And I found out that they would only keep like 2 of each. So they had like 2 25-year-old white guys and a redhead guy and a redhead girl and a couple Asians, a couple this and that, but they didn't have a huge roster. They just would, kept it limited. So all their people worked all the time. So that being said, I told myself, I'm like, well, it took me a year and a half to get my first gig. And I said, I didn't want to go back to Michigan without doing something in music. So I literally had the interview at Acme and gig. The interview was Friday, the gig was Saturday. And I said, if I don't get the acting gig, I'll just move home. And at least I played a gig, that weekend. So I go up. First, I went to the acting audition on a Friday, I think. So again, I was in this big, huge skyscraper building in LA, probably Beverly Hills too. But it was the craziest thing. Like, I went to the front desk, told them who I was, and they're like, okay, walk this way to the elevators. So then there's a person that checks my ID, presses the elevator button, and there's someone inside the elevator. So we go to, say, floor 3, and then we get out, and then we walk up this stairway, and then we get to another elevator, and then it's this kind of zig and zag, and I go, what's this all about? And the guy told me, he's like, the people would scale the side of the building to get to where you're going. If they knew where the audition was, they'd be climbing climbing the building to try to get there. So we have to have high security and make sure, no one gets in that's not supposed to. And I was like, Jesus. So I got there, and so there's like 5 or 6 people, and I was no actor, you know, um, but I was there. So they're like, all right, who are you? What do you do? And I said, well, do you have any special talents? I'm like, oh, I like to sing. And one guy goes, can you sing any Neil Diamond? And I said, yeah, I can do Sweet Caroline. And they said, oh, cool, because this is his cousin. So I don't know if that was a joke or not, but I'm guessing it might have been his cousin. So I start singing, and I don't think it was bad, but they said, okay, well, we'll let you know. So it turns out they already had a couple guys that looked like me, my age range and Caucasian. So they said, thanks, but no thanks, which was fine. I was like, this was like the top. So I wasn't expecting to really get it. And plus, I wanted to play music more than I did act. So, anyways, I tried. So I had my first gig, and like I said, everybody came. Everyone I knew in LA was there. It was jam packed, and I played, and it was a lot of fun. And then at the end of the night, I left, and I went back to my apartment complex, and I turned in a 30-day notice saying, my apartment manager, I'm gonna leave LA. I'm gonna leave my apartment. I was on a month-to-month lease at that time, and he said okay. So had a good time, did it. It was a good accomplishment. I have on my well, I can't tell you that story yet, but I have some cool pictures and my name on the marquee and stuff like that on the Sunset Strip. So pretty cool. And so on Monday, I went to pick up my check, and the manager who hired me, Miss Dawn, said, "Hey, did so and so get a hold of you?" And I'm like, "I don't know who that is." She's like, "Oh, you got to call this guy." And so I called him, and he happened to be my sound man, which I didn't know I even had a sound man because it's just me and the guitar. But he was adjusting the volumes. And so I'm talking on the phone with this guy, and he says, "Hey," he's like, I heard you talking about you're leaving." No, I was saying it from the stage. You can't, I can't let you leave, man. He's like, "I got a studio, I got to record you." He's like, "I'll help you get some gigs. I'll help you get some auditions." And so next thing I know, I'm at this guy's house and recording the first 4 songs I wrote, and I came up with my first EP, my first 4-song CD. It's called No Regrets, and the cover of it is my marquee, picture my name in the marquee at the Coconut Teaser in the Sunset Strip. So I don't know how long I've been going, but again, I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger, and I will tell you that after that guy talked me into staying, I wound up going back to the apartment manager saying, I want to stay, can I still stay? And he's like handing me the resignation letter or whatever. And he said, I didn't want you to leave anyway, so you let me rip it up. So I wound up staying for 5 years after that. So that's that story. And I don't want to go too long. Keep your attention, but thanks again, everybody. Thanks for all the suggestions. We got a good start with the first one. If this is the first time you're seeing one, go back on my YouTube channel, please, and check out my first episode. Thanks for subscribing. If you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, I already got 160 subscribers, I think. And please share it, and please check out WaveX. I'm going to put the website in my notes on YouTube. So far, all I have this on is YouTube, but I'm getting a lot of help from people that know what they're doing, and soon it'll be in different places. But I'm going to bug you guys a little bit, and or your friends or our friends, and see if they'll listen to it, give it a shot. But once again, thanks everybody, and I'll see you soon. I got a lot more stories and guests coming up. Have a good day.